Hey there, Commander fellows, and today we're doing another data deviation and we're talking about Command Sphere. If you're enjoying the content here, you can join the Squirrel Army by subscribing and turning on the notification. Alright, so this topic of Command Sphere came up quite a bit on Twitter last week. I believe Pleasant Kenobi was talking about it. I even replied to him and was talking about it and whatnot. It's one of those things that there's always going to be different opinions in Magic and whatnot about cards and whatnot, because people assess certain things to be good enough or better than what perhaps they might be, or some people might assess some things to be worse than what they perhaps be. But the truth might lie in that middle ground, and I wanted to discuss it, and I wanted to perhaps do this thing that I was thinking about doing, because, hey, we did the data deviation on some commander decks and whatnot, so I thought, well, why not challenge the numbers for a specific card? So that's what we're kind of doing here. So you can see it on the screen now. It's in a lot of decks, 264,000 plus decks. I'm not going to read it all. But that's still only 17% of the decks that are out there on EDH. So the majority of decks don't even run this card. So that is a, heartening thing perhaps for me to be like, well, most people think that this card isn't the most amazing. And the people that perhaps do run it in the format do know, hey, this card belongs in some certain decks. And those certain decks that it goes in, it goes well in. But it is an okay card, and that's the thing. I don't want to say anything terribly bad about this card. It's not a terribly bad card. I don't like it personally, perhaps, because I'm always irked by 3 mana plus ramp or whatnot, unless it's land-based ramp or whatnot, and even then, I'd rather take 2 mana or whatnot. It is a decent mana rock. It's been around for a long time. It's one of Commander's sort of staples and whatnot. But I do think that perhaps it should be in some less decks, because I see it in a lot of decks all the time. And as I say, when you look at how many decks are actually recorded and whatnot, it's actually probably a very small percent of the number of decks that are actually being built and actually have cards like this in there and whatnot. So I do think it should be in less decks. Less people should perhaps play it. It's only really relevant in certain decks and whatnot for the most part, or in certain colors and that sort of thing, because, in theory, perhaps you might have less good options, quote unquote, and whatnot. So, yeah, it doesn't not belong in no decks, certainly, but it does seem like perhaps the number of people that I see playing it deserve to hear that more to a degree, but some people won't really listen, and I get it that people don't want to always listen to a degree, or just go, well, it's a card and it's in my colors and I happen to have it and it's pretty cheap and, that's good enough for me. But, again, when you're looking at everyone else who's, got all these 2-drop mana rocks and is really cutting their curve down, then you're kind of like, well, I'm not on that power level. And then again, you've got the people that are on the power level that are way above that are playing, 1-drop or 0-drop mana rocks and whatnot, and Llanowar Elves and all that sort of, all the fast mana sort of stuff. So it's completely different metagame. So again, if you are geared towards the right metagame, it's a fine mana rock as well. And in limited and whatnot, I'm not going to talk about that, or draft or whatever. Then it's really good, because again, you'll have less options, so you'll be like, okay, cool, I will take it. It's not unplayable, I'm not going to say that, but again, it doesn't belong in that many decks, I don't think. Green just does not need this. Basically, green doesn't need any mana rocks. You can throw your soul rings in there if you really want, obviously. But again, green doesn't really need any of this stuff because it's got so much other stuff, and it doesn't just really need this kind of thing. So you just don't need any of this stuff in green. Unless your deck's kind of weird. There's actually that new commander that likes that's in green that likes mana rocks. I really think that's a huge color pie break, but we're not going to get into that too much. But anyway, again, so you really want this in non-green decks. So yeah, and then you want it in decks that need both an artifact more so and whatnot. So you want to be able to reuse this. You don't want to be just like, oh, I have this random 3-drop mana rock. I could be playing Mind Stone over this, or I could be playing, 7 or 8 other signets over this, or whatever it is, or talismans, or whatnot, or, this or that. So there's a lot of other mana rocks and whatnot, or whatever mana-producing effects, Wayfarers, Bauble, etc., that I feel you would get more value out of being able to ramp earlier. And yes, sure, later it's a cantrip to get a card, and that's probably the biggest argument for it, to say, oh, well, it's a cantrip later. Well, so is Mind Stone. So, that comes down a turn earlier than Command Sphere and taps a turn before it as well. So, again, you can see where that comparison is being made. Yes, sure, Command Sphere taps for a colored mana, but for the most part, you don't really care because 9 times out of 10, you're going to have your colors anyway. So having your colors like this doesn't really affect it that much for the most part. So yeah, I don't know, guys. I don't want to poo-poo on this card or whatnot, and I don't think there's any point to, because people are going to play what they want to play, when they want to play, and where they want to play. As I say, if you are in the right space or you just want to play it, then that is, 1000% up to you. I'm just offering, hey, this is my perspective and this is my advice for you if you're thinking about putting this card in every deck or whatnot. I don't think it goes in every deck. It goes in some decks, like perhaps like Osgear the Reconstructor, or decks like that care about artifacts, care about getting artifacts back from the graveyard, copying artifacts, etc. Doing things with artifacts, not just, it's an artifact and it's in my colors and it offers me a couple of things. Yeah, offering you a couple of things is good over something that doesn't offer you anything else other than ramp. But again, for the most part, you can just get better ramp and something that also does you something else, like Liquid Metal Talk and whatnot, and things like that. So again, you've got a lot of other options, really. And Wayfarer's Bauble, Navigation Compass, even though that's a fair amount of mana to sink into it, and Burnished Heart, and that those are a lot more mana to sink into, but I still find that they're probably more useful, because if you're in the right deck, it's easier to abuse them and easier to get your lands and whatnot sort of going and whatnot, and sort of thin your deck in that way more quickly than just drawing random cards. Even though you're getting lands for a very high rate, at least you're thinning your deck of those lands with those cards, and will be able to draw gas eventually. And perhaps a card like this could help you draw that gas later on as well, but so could Mind Stone. So again, there are a lot of options, but you could run both of these in a deck like that, in an Osgear deck, just to get that kind of higher level of consistency to be able to get through your deck much quicker and whatnot. But anyway, guys, that is my thoughts on this one. As I say, you guys can tell me if you think I'm wrong, tell me if you think I'm right, whatever. I don't really mind, because again, I'm going to believe what I'm going to believe, and you guys are going to believe what you guys are going to believe. I don't try to try to convert people too hard. I just try to say, hey, look, perhaps think about this card, and that's all I do ever. Like, whatnot. So I want to do more of these, like, that might challenge individual cards. We might go back because actually, I think, like as I said, data deviation really was what I was doing for some of these other cards like Temple of False God and whatnot. It was like, hey, run this card less, whatnot, or run this card more. So hey, I want to find those cards and whatnot that I feel people should play more, find those cards that people maybe should play less, and whatnot. Because again, the more that you can play the game and have fun in playing the game is better for you, I feel. Like, and playing better Mana Rocks and better ramp is just one of those things. It does get out of hand to a certain point as well. And it's sort of like, well, difficult to sort of say where is that cutoff point, but I think the cutoff point is at 2. So that's just where I'm at. If you're playing things at 3, I feel things will be a lot slower and whatnot. But if that's what you enjoy, hey, who am I to argue? But anyway, guys, as I say, if I don't see you down there in those comments, I'll see you in the next one.